Now let me discuss different national implementation case studies. The vulnerability assessment applications. India's National Mission Framework. In 2018, India's Department of Science and Technology carried out a comprehensive vulnerability assessment of 640 districts using IPCC indicators across 12 aspects. These variables include rainfall variability, temperature maxima and minima, drought frequency, flood risk, soil erosion potential, crop yield sensitivity, crop coverage, population density, poverty indices, road connectivity, health infrastructure, and efficacy of government. The methodology utilized normalized composite indexing, which identified 117 districts as high priority and necessitated quick adaptation effort. Arunachal Pradesh has a vulnerability score of 0.78 due to extreme rainfall, with annual average exceeding more than 3000 mm. The other factor which contribute to vulnerability score are the high seismic exposure, as Arunachal Pradesh lies in the zone 5th classification, and low road density, thereby results in limiting emergency responses and market access. Kerala scored the vulnerability of 0.72 due to rising coastal erosion rates, aged dam infrastructure, on an average they are like above 45 years, and dense settlement in the hazardous coastal regions. The National Adaptation Fund for Climate Change allocated Rs 15,000 crore based on evidence-based ranking to prioritize hill slope stabilization, coastal control zone enforcement, and dam safety retrofitting. So these were the few examples from India. Now let me discuss few examples at international level also. And in this context, I will discuss about Vietnam's Mekong Delta. According to a hybrid IPCC UNDP assessment conducted in 13 Mekong Delta province, a hybrid of IPCC and UNDP assessment was conducted. This primarily focused on the restoration of 50,000 hectare mangrove belt, which dissipated cyclone energy. It also promoted floating agriculture on 1,200 hectare that accommodates acid sulfate soil. Elevated infrastructure that serves 17 million people were given priority. The assessment sparked a 5-year mobilization of $1.2 billion in adaptation funds from the World Bank, Green Climate Fund, and bilateral sources, resulting in 92% of 127 prioritized action being implemented by 2025, that is the target date. What I elaborated in the table, the same thing I have discussed with you in form of implementation in different countries. I cited example from India, from Kerala, from Arunachal Pradesh, and then I discussed Vietnam case study. I hope now these methodology are much clear to you. And after explanation of different types of methodology adopted by different IPCC report, now let me take you to the policy integration and adaptation linkages. Adaptation strategy and implementation framework offer positive net benefits across different climatic scenarios, with benefit cost ratio ranging from 3.5 to 7.2, irrespective of emission routes. Early warning system represent a top priority, stretching anticipation period from 24 hours to 72 hours or more, employing an integrated Doppler's radar network, community SMS alert platform, and machine learning precipitation nowcasting. In Bangladesh, Bangladesh Cyclone Preparedness Program attained 92% evacuation success rates during Cyclone Amphan and Yas in 2021, saving 1.2 million lives, corresponding to a BCR of 6.8. Diversification of livelihood with more than 2 income streams per household lowers climate vulnerability by 47% by combining the farm, horticulture, poultry, or farms like agro-processing or ecotourism. These activate India's National Rural Livelihood Mission, offer diversification to 7 crore households, lowering distress migration by 38% during the year 2019 drought. Not only this, agroforestry adaptation across 5 to 10% cultivable area improves durability by 25%, more water retention, 18% yield stabilization and carbon income streams, whereas rainwater harvesting systems such as farm ponds and check dams capture 30 to 40% seasonal runoff, enabling dual irrigation livestock purpose with a BCR of 4.2 in comparison to tube well expansion. Now let me discuss about the transformational adaptation triggers. What is it? When incremental initiatives run up against biophysical limits, economic thresholds or social tipping points, transformational adaptation becomes required. Coral reef bleach irreversibly over plus 2 degrees centigrade persistent thermal stress, demanding the redesign of marine conservation areas and the diversification of tourism beyond the snorkeling economy. So, students, the fundamental elements of IPCC, the core concepts are: the first one is exposure. This is the extent to which a system is physically exposed to climate hazards. Second is sensitivity, the extent of influence of the system or population. And third one is adaptive capacity. This is the resources, technology, governance, social capital have an effect on the ability to adapt, cope and recover impacts. UNDP goes further and include human development indicators that include income poverty, unemployment, health status, access to education, social exclusion and political voices. The definition of adaptive capacity encompasses empowerment, quality of governance, livelihood diversification, access to social protection and gender equity in its definition, with a more multidimensional and socially grounded concept of vulnerability. When it comes to application of a scale, the IPCC framework are mostly applied in scientific studies, large scale scenario analysis and international evaluations. They promote climate models and projection across time, space and regularly include national climate action plans for international climate change negotiations. Besides that, UNDP models are implemented at more direct level, which is a policy level such as national and local development initiative. They are concerned with practical vulnerability assessment that guide the adaptation policy, poverty reduction measures, disaster risk management and inclusive governance framework. Their method encourage participatory evaluation that incorporate the input and local knowledge of a stakeholder. In this, they have kept three components. First is emphasis, where IPCC focuses on biophysical vulnerability that is associated with climate risk and changes. UNDP focuses on social vulnerability, equity and the quality of governance. IPCC considered vulnerability as scientific and technical phenomena which is built under the risk framework, but United Nations Development Programme sees vulnerability through the prism of inequality, social injustice and lack of development. The second one is temporal scope. IPCC framework assume current vulnerability and future projection in regard to the climate change scenario and socio-economic pathways which provide a dynamic perspective of the way in which risk changes with time. UNDP has a wider scope which bridges the relationship between climate vulnerability and current development trajectories. It focuses on dealing with long-term chronic poverty and structural inequalities that influence vulnerability at long-term level that does immediate exposure to hazards. Third is participation. The model used by IPCC is mainly scientific and model based, with vulnerability assessment having access to quantitative data, climatic models and indicators which are mostly not participatory in nature, but use of participatory methods is encouraged in practice. Compared to this, UNDP is intrinsically facilitative and inclusive of vulnerable assessment. It brings community, local government and stakeholders in defining the priorities of risk adaptation action and thus making better the ownership, relevance of effectiveness of adaptation action. So, with this, I would like to conclude today's chapter. This chapter elaborates climate vulnerability is measured and understood by citing work through their governmental panel on climate change and United Nations Development Programme. As I mentioned that when IPCC was established and which are the organization related to this, I did a comparative analysis of different methods used by UNEP and IPCC both. I also discuss how vulnerability assessments are applied in separate sectors such as agriculture, rising temperature and shifting rainfall pattern that threaten the crop yields. I discussed about changing water flows and increasing stress on communities are major issues in water management. I discussed about the public health system and what kind of methodology and technology is used. I discussed about urban areas and coastal ecosystem, in which different types of drought and hazards were discussed. I different case studies, national case studies as well as international case studies. From national case studies, the chapter highlighted the significance of integrating vulnerability framework into geography education. By understanding the spatial analysis, risk mapping and participatory assessment techniques, you will gain those skills which are needed to address complex climate challenges. In nutshell, the IPCC and UNDP approaches are complementary. Together, they offer a comprehensive pathway for reducing climate vulnerability and promoting resilient development. With this, I am ending today's chapter.